Ready for the grimiest and grittiest of all podcasts, pro wrestling, music, and entertainment is the Ewokk and JB Show.
Yo, what is crack-a-lacking? You got the Ewokk and JB Show. We got the new logo, new vibes. I ain't even drinking tonight on the podcast because last week I was making some changes. Tonight is a very special episode. Tonight is a very special episode with a very special guest, Mr. Ice Pick himself, Mr. Vic Capri.
You know How you guys doing?
How you
doing, great, brother?
And then Mr. JB, what was crack-a-lacking with you?
Oh, man, you know what? Doing pretty good, man. Had a busy day today. Got everything taken care of. Now we're doing probably most anticipated podcast we've done so far. Because I know everybody has actually hit me up about this. They're excited. Of course, this man probably doesn't even need to be announced for how awesome he is. But Vic is a true Chicago legend. The man has wrestled probably more names in the business than probably like 15 promotions combined with talent has done that. So one of the few world travelers.
The whole legend thing is always, I tell everybody it's way too kind. I mean, there are guys that come out of Chicago that are bigger names and have done more than me. So, but I always appreciate it.
But it's the truth though, man. Like when I first moved to the Midwest, everyone talks about you like upper echelon. Like, okay, there's the Vic Capris and then there's everybody else. And that's how a lot of people, I mean, I'm being serious. Guys in the locker room, Ewokk will tell you this. Guys in the locker room talks about you like that, man. You're like the Clint Eastwood, man with no name, walking into town. Everybody knows who you are. And just, you're the real deal gunslinger, man, when it comes down to it.
I appreciate that.
So, question. So you started back in 1998 when you first started out with Windy City. What was it like during that time breaking into, at the time, is one of Chicago's only promotions? I believe it at that time was. Next to, I think, what PCW was just starting out, wasn't it? Around the time period?
Yeah, it was. That was back when the athletic commission was still in place, so there weren't a lot of promotions. There were maybe 3 or 4, and that was it. And so once the athletic commission was gone, everybody started popping up through promotions everywhere. But when I started, maybe 3 or 4 in the Chicagoland and northern Indiana, I got started. I was working at a gym and I ran into a guy named Mike Carey. He wrestled at Skulls Manson. And the owner of the gym actually had wrestled for Windy City years before. And just talking to him, he's like, you'd be a great lightweight guy to come wrestle. I had been a fan since I was in 2nd grade. So I was like, I'll go check it out and see what it's like. And got hooked right from there. So
yeah, that's awesome. So when it came down to like your first week of training, like how did that go for you?
First week, I still remember like Steve Boz and Mike Anthony pulling me aside and saying, "Okay, quit ribbing us. Where'd you train before?" And I was like, I didn't. I just, I played. Yeah, for some reason I took to it. I don't know why. I started out, I played as a kid, baseball, football, soccer. I played football in high school and a few years at a D3 school in college. And so I just took it as you just be athletic and go out there and do it. And, like we were talking before we went on air, I thought I was invincible still. So it's like, oh, fall on the ground, fall on my head. Sure. Boom. There. What else you want me to do?
and like around was it like 98, like what was like the Midwest, especially like Chicago, what was that scene like? Was it a little bit more serious? Was there like still like a bunch of like feds popping up, like not like besides WCPW, like was there anything like other than that like in the area?
There was a few. I can't remember what letters he used, but Mike Bonomo was running, Sonny Rogers was running. There was some stuff up in Milwaukee. Carmine was running up there. So was DeFalco, I think. And like Ian was running down in Indiana, Kentucky. But it was still it was kind of one of those points where things were quiet in Chicago at that time. You know, there wasn't a whole lot coming out of Chicago. Not a lot of guys coming out of Chicago at all. And just, I don't know, it's kind of, when I started, it felt like, it's like when Jason, Rain, and I both, because we both started maybe like a week or two apart. It was kind of, that's when everything started to make that upswing and things started to pick up and people started noticing Chicago again, is what it felt like. So
that's
You
dope.
you guys were like the first big wave of junior heavyweights came out of the Midwest at that time period, weren't you?
yeah, I owe everything to Christopher Daniels, to be honest with you. Aside from like Boz and Mike Anthony and Gratchner and Sam, unfortunately I have to mention him, but yeah, there was heat for a number of years between him and I, but we can talk about that later. It was Christopher Daniels who actually came to the school the one day, and he was talking with Sam and Gratch, and there was a Japanese magazine, and I started flipping through it. That was a huge mark for Japanese wrestling. And I saw the picture of him and Shinzaki. I was like, wow, you wrestled Jinsei Shinzaki. And he just looked at me and said, you didn't call him Hakushi. I said, no, that was a shitty gimmick. Like, it's Jinsei Shinzaki. And right from there, we hit it off. And it was just made life a lot easier for me. He started when it was maybe a couple months later, he was doing the Super 8 for the ECWA out on the East Coast. And one of the guys had blown his ACL and they needed somebody to fill in. So he dropped my name and told me where to send all my information. Nice. And I did. And Jim Kettner like called me a couple days later and said, hey, I want you to come out. So, okay. He goes, make sure you have promo pictures, the tape, this. Kevin Kelly is going to be there because they were running a cross promotion thing. Kevin was helping with the company and he's still an agent in WWF. And WOW Magazine at the time, World of Wrestling, that after was running, and plus Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, and Inside Wrestling were all there. So they took pictures of all of us. This big like press conference thing in the beginning. So it just was like, I went from just wrestling in Windy City to all of a sudden, I was in national magazines overnight, and it was just made my head spin.
And that grind seems like a hell of a lot harder than it is now. Like, we got social media and all this stuff right now, and it's like if you really wanted it, like, you know what I mean, you have to try to get somebody to get your tapes recorded, and so try to get somebody like to get your headshots and photos, man. Like,
yeah, I remember back in 2001 when I broke in, there was guys would actually have to mail off cassette tapes, VHS tapes to people with your resume printed up and an 8x10 put into it and send it in. It's exactly. Kids today don't know that fucking struggle at all compared to what guys do, man.
That's exactly what I had to send Jim Kettner. And then I had to bring another package with me. And after my match, Kevin Kelly came up to me and asked me if I had a tape and picture and everything, and I just handed him the envelope. I said, Jim told me you were going to be here, so in case you asked, here it is. So, and I started getting extra work, when they were doing the loop for Illinois and Wisconsin. So
nice. Now, you growing up, you was a huge Japan fan ever since you was a kid.
Who's that? Kevin?
No, I'm talking about you. You was a Japanese wrestling fan ever since you was a kid, weren't you?
Well, I started watching wrestling. My cousin turned me on to wrestling when one day I was over there and we were watching AWA and the Road Warriors came out. And it was just this second grader. They just saw these big muscle bound guys, like Iron Man playing in the background, the dog collars and spike gauntlets on their wrists. They came out and just beat the crap out of a couple of guys. And I was just like, what is this? Oh, wow. And fell in love with it. And it wasn't until years later I got into Japanese wrestling. Just because you couldn't see it back then. I mean, you're talking second grade, we were still early 80s. there wasn't cable, there wasn't an internet or anything. I didn't get into Japanese wrestling until mid 90s. I started finding out about tape trading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, pre-internet days, you tell somebody, you'd write them a letter and say, I have these, what do you want? You dub it, send it to them, and they'd send you what you wanted from them. And, you start finding that stuff out, through the internet, before there was YouTube.
Remember when PWI used to have the tape trader section inside the magazines? Yeah. Same way here, man. Same here.
Damn.
Yeah.
I want to be a wrestler. Like shit. I wish I was a tape trader back in the 90s, but I was also like, not born. That sounds actually pretty fun. But knowing me, I probably would have like kept some tapes, not send them out to the next person, whatever. I don't know anything about tape trading, but
you would get the tape and then dub it and then send it back, or they would dub it, copy, and send it to you, and you'd send them something. So that way. As I got older, though, when I moved out of my parents' house, lucky enough, my condo is actually about a mile from a Japanese mall.
Oh wow!
And I had a buddy that was doing a lot of tape trading with Japanese stuff. He turned me on to like Fire Pro Wrestling and all that stuff. So we went, and there was a video store in there. We just asked, like, pro wrestling. It was a rental store. And he came over and told us All Japan, New Japan. We said, we want to rent them. We rented all of them, dubbed them, brought them back. And then weekly he'd have new tapes, and we would just do it that way. And we would just double them, and they would have the TV shows from Samurai, back in the day, the Samurai TV stuff.
Oh, that's dope.
That was the easiest way to do it.
Were you more of a All Japan guy or more of a New Japan guy?
In the beginning, All Japan. It was still, New Japan was, it was kind of coming to an end where it's kind of dropping off, and they were going to like more of the shoot fighting style. And it was a lot of bump submission, and they'd be laying around for a while. And to me, it got a little boring at that. And some of the guys just didn't work well. You had Ogawa and Fujita. I wasn't a fan of. But All Japan was still back then. It was the four pillars, and the fifth, if you throw Akiyama into that bunch, which I think you should.
Yeah.
So Misawa, Kawada, Taue, and Kobashi and Akiyama before everybody split off. And back then it was, the old school Japanese. You don't submit. It's not honorable to give up. You have to get pinned, type of thing. So they would do the submissions, but nobody ever gave up in the submission. They would use it to weaken them to go down to the finish. And I just loved it. I thought that the honor behind that and their thoughts by it and portraying it in the wrestling, just, I don't know, it just stuck with me, and I loved it.
It was really good storytelling, in my opinion. It's definitely, if you get like the Japanese versus the Gaijin, it's like, the Japanese don't want to lose to a foreigner, it's a big deal to them.
But then you also, aside from those guys, you had Hansen, Dr. Death, Gary Albright, who was the original like suplex machine. He was insane.
Yeah,
and then you also had, Gordy. You had Bruiser Brody out there all the time, and I was a huge Brody mark. I loved him. He was just this crazy guy. And then when Hansen came in with him and they were tagging, it was just like mayhem, and it was great.
Yeah, definitely. Would you ever get the Brody and Hansen versus like Misawa Kobashi matches?
Yeah.
Those were classics.
Yeah.
I'm a huge All Japan guy myself. Me and Ewokk, that's all we ever talk about when we're off here, but we'll talk about King's Road stuff like all day.
Yeah, because like I started getting into like certain like Japanese wrestling as I started like progressing in training and whatnot, just because I like that style, that King's Road style of wrestling. And I kind of just got into All Japan like probably like I want to say like my first month of training. And like I'm just like amazed by it, what I'm saying, like the storytelling and a lot of things. I was a big fan of Takayama.
Yeah.
Huge fan of that dude.
I still, to this day, in a match, I'd be like, all right, we're going to do a Takayama Don Fry. pride fight just to start the match, and just the two guys just start punching.
Just beating the shit out of each other.
That's the spot. That's how I call it. It's Takayama Don Pride. Just grab and go. And it just brutal fight. But Takayama was great, especially when he was younger, before he started gaining weight and everything. But he was, wow. When he still had black hair, even.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Great big man.
Yes. Yeah. Like him and Poe. I mean, those two, for their size, could move so well. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
The storytelling. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
The storytelling, I mean, the U.S. is so used to like the Memphis kind of storytelling, in the old Memphis wrestling, and Texas, and Ric Flair and Steamboat and those guys. But the storytelling is just so different out of Japan, and it's the U.S. has gotten so far away from it, and it's now more of, we'll talk to tell the story, and then you'll just wrestle. Where back in the day, Flair and Steamboat could work the arm and the leg for 60, 55, 56 minutes, and then roll up with the tights in like the last 30 seconds and drive the crowd crazy. And that doesn't happen anymore. But they still do that kind of stuff in Japan. So, and it's just more around the athleticism. You don't see the promos in the ring. You do the press conference after the match, and we'll talk then, and then we'll tell the story in the ring. So,
one of the questions one of our fans asked, how did you come across the nickname the Ice Pick?
So when I started, Mike Carey, the guy, he had come up with the idea right after I started to change his name and become Nick the Cobra Cabrera. He was going to tag with Iron Mike Sampson. And Sam Becerro had decided they were going to do this mafia gimmick. And he would be the Don. Then there was Vito Two Fingers Fontaine, and they wanted to bring me in. And he just said, once we had come up with my name, because there were too many Mikes, I wasn't allowed to be Mike. So I landed on Vic Capri instead of Vince Capri, as what he originally had. And he just went, Vic, Ice Pick, works. And that was it. And I was like, okay, let's go with it. So it wasn't even me, brainstorming with the name. It was Vince Capri and Vic Capone or something like that. And I was like, I don't like this, but I like this, and we'll do this. Yeah. And then he threw the Ice Pick thing.
That was kind of funny. I talked to Tully Bertarelli, because it was actually Tully asked that question. Yeah, I love Tully, but Tully was like, he messaged me. He's like, you think maybe because of Mike's Sicilian heritage, you think that he got thrown that? And I'm like, I have a feeling.
So he stabbed like Tully thought he stabbed somebody or something.
No, it was the Italian mafia gimmick that we were going to do. So it was just that's exactly what it was. It was everybody, all the old school mafia guys in the the 20s and 30s and stuff like that. They all had their nicknames. So Sam decided every one of us was going to have one too. So, and yeah, we were all Sicilian. It just turned out that way, I think.
I had a hunch, man. I never wanted to ask. I was like, he's probably looked at me like, what an idiot, So. Jamie Salmons asked a couple of questions here. He said one of the questions for Vic is, what is the difference in the atmosphere when you wrestled in different countries? How they treat wrestling? I know you wrestled in Japan, you wrestled in Europe. Where else have you wrestled at?
I was in Ireland and in England, and it's when the first place I traveled when I went overseas was the UK, and the guy they put me in there with were like, okay, we landed that night, and like, you guys could do 20 minutes for off, and he still wrestled that old school rounds type of thing normally when he was in London, and we were in Ireland at the time. So it was a lot of, I'd hit him with something and he would kick out just by going, I'm like, what are you doing? And we were like in the middle of the match, it didn't dawn on me. I'm used to the big kick out from somebody after a move. And so it was just really kind of weird to me at first. but it was a lot of like the chain wrestling and things like that with them. The fans in Ireland was really different because, excuse me, there was still a lot of censorship. Like if you watch the WWF on TV at the time, WWF, as somebody got punched, they would show a quick shot of the fans and then come back.
That's so wild.
It was really weird. Yeah, we watched it at one point. It was like, how do you? I'm gonna have an epileptic seizure trying to watch this, just jumping back and forth like that. And so to actually see the guys in the ring instead of, because they didn't get a lot of wrestling in Ireland, and the stuff they did get, they would say, you know, Kane's going to be here and Undertaker's going to be here, and it'd be these guys in costumes.
Yeah.
And they would never talk because they had the accent and everything like that.
Oh.
So like, you're from Chicago, go out there and cut a promo. Tell them your grandfather was an Irish policeman in Chicago. I'm like, my last name's Capri. It's Italian. What do you? You're Irish Italian. Just talk so they can hear your accent. And I'm like, okay. And so I'd have to go out there and talk, and never really cut many promos at the time because I wasn't allowed to. And it was weird. But they would come over and they would just want to hear you talk, and they just bought whatever you had. I didn't even have pictures. I had flyers that Mike Modest had with him, and he was signing them, and he passed it to me, and it was a picture of Donovan Morgan. And I signed by Donovan, and they were like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Well, that's me. I used to have blonde hair," and I'd hand it to him, and that was it. They didn't know.
Didn't know any better. Yeah.
But because I didn't have anything at that point. So we actually had to go to an internet cafe so I could print out pictures to actually sell them. But it was just one of those things. Here, make a couple bucks, sign it. Tell them it's $1 for you to sign your name on it now. We're okay. Just make extra money. So yeah, there's a lot of pictures with in Ireland at that time that with Donovan Morgan with my signature. So that's okay. He took a pair of my trunks with him and wrestled wearing them in Japan his first tour. So it's all right.
Yeah, hey, it's a good trade off. You know, he took those, made money off of them. Yeah, it's all good. Another question Jamie had, which I think is actually a good question here. From the current talent from in the Chicago scene today, all the young guys of today, who do you think in your mind would have actually survived and actually thrived pretty well back in the Windy City days?
I don't know. I very few, I think.
Yeah, because people kind of forget, like the '90s generation was still the last of the protected business type of
Yeah.
guys that, you know, everything was so kayfabe. It wasn't just out in the open like it is now. You know.
Yeah, that was before, you know, Secrets of Pro Wrestling came out in 2000s, I think, and Vince didn't come out and say it was fake until then as well, sometime after that. You know, so it was a lot of kayfabe. I mean, I remember working shows for Ian Rotten, and even that was in the 2000s, and heels had one locker room, babies had another locker room, and you had to call it in the ring.
Yep.
You know, because he still kept the kayfabe. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of people. I'll be honest. I'm terrible about calling a match in the ring from scratch, but I'm good at calling my stuff in the ring. You know, after we've talked it out and beforehand, because if it's 20 steps to get to this point, I want one word to call is say we're going to get to here, and we go. But you know, trying to call all that in the ring, it would be damn near impossible for some of these guys, especially with all the flippy stuff that they do. And it's just it was different. You know, there's good and bad to what was different about it. And I don't think some guys would be able to handle it because, you know, back then, kind of a prime example, when I started, 2 months in, I had my first match. And there were guys that were mad because they had been there over a year and all they were doing was a battle run. And then things happened, and by my third match, it was Mike Sampson and I were the tag champs. Because Mike Carey, Skulls Manson, Nick, Cobra Cabrera, whatever you wanted to call him, herniated a disc in his back and was done. So I had to fill the spot. And So I had a title by my third match, but I never wrestled to win it. And so there was a lot of bad feelings. So when we would practice, we'd go through all our drills, do everything. They'd teach us something. And then everybody would get in a corner and you get tagged in and just kind of call stuff in the ring and do stuff. Well, I always just bumped for everybody and I never really fought back. And Ripper Manson, who was one of Mike Carey's old tag partners, pulled me aside the one day. He's like, why don't you fight back? You're just bumping around for everybody. You're going to get hurt. And my response was, I still got to pay my dues. You know, these guys, a lot of these guys have bad taste in their mouth about me because of the fact that 3 matches in, I've got a belt. And he went, oh, okay. Threw a punch at me, grabbed me, threw me in the ring, called Boz, Anthony, Willie the Bomb, and I think one other person, I can't remember. And he's like, power bomb drills. And for about 15 minutes, it was power bombs and suplexes. Me just taking a beating. And afterwards, he picked me up and he's like, you better start fighting back or we're doing this again. And I was like, because now you paid your dues. And he kind of made the announcement to the guys that were sitting outside the ring, like, Vic's officially paid his dues. Anybody fucks with him, you deal with me. And it was like, okay. So it was, at that point, it was like, okay, now I guess I paid my dues now, you know, before it was you'd be a rookie in a battle royal and get chopped a whole bunch of times. But
Yeah.
you know, that's how it happened with me, was that day in practice. And it's stuff like that I still remember vividly to this day, you know, and that was in 98. And I've been dropped on my head a lot. So yeah, it's there's a big difference. And I don't think everybody needs to, oh, the rookies in the battle royal, chop the shit out of them. You know, I don't think that's needed. You know, I don't think it's needed. There is some paying your dues, and there's some of just being a dick, basically. So to me, paying your dues is, you know, I did a show and I was doing an ICW show. It was Winchester and I were wrestling. We were in the main, and after we were done, changed, and they're tearing down the ring. And the girl who wrestles for, she's kind of going all over now. Sky Blue was there along with Saul. Saul wrestled on the show. Sky didn't. She was just there. And a few other guys from Chicago style wrestling were there, and they left early. And as I wanted to walk in, I see Sky carrying boards. And I stopped her and I'm like, you didn't even wrestle tonight, did you? She went, no. I said, oh, okay. All right. And she walked away with the board. I messaged Hades and everybody. I'm like, that girl gets it. So does Saul. You know, they get it. They stuck around. Some of the other guys left, but they get it. They stuck around. She wasn't even on the show and she was pulling boards and tearing down the ring. Like, so those people, I think they would be able to make it as long as you didn't beat the crap out of them. I think they'd make it because they get it. They know how to pay their dues and what to do to get noticed. And it's not always you got to drive for a hot dog and sleep in your car overnight, you know, stuff like that. It's not getting the crap beat out of you by the vet, you know, but it's helping out, you know, tearing down, setting up, being there, you know, even though you didn't wrestle.
Yeah.
So that stuff can be more important. And those people, I think, people that do stuff like that, I think would have made it back then better than some other people. So, I mean, I've seen tons of guys that been on shows where promoter says, hey, we need a hand tearing down. And if I wasn't in the main, I change, I walk out and I start pulling ropes and stuff. And a lot of guys come walking in the ring and they're like, Vic, what are you doing? I'm helping. I'm like, well, shit, now I got to help too. Well, help. We get out of here faster. We get paid faster.
Yeah.
Let's go. And it's like, well, if you're doing it, I have to do it.
Now, one thing I noticed about Japan, when I used to do a lot of business with the 0-1 guys, I've noticed that when the shows were over, from main eventer to the young boys, everyone took at least one piece of the ring down and put it in the ring truck. And it's so amazing that you go like, you worked in Japan. You've seen that yourself, I bet.
Mhm.
That it's like that in almost every promotion. Everyone works together as a team. But yet you go here to like United States, it's sometimes it's the rookies who are trying to get out of sitting down, taking up a
Yeah,
ring or putting it down. And yet it's a vets like Vic, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not?
Vic.
Yep.
It's
We,
it's mind boggling, man. How guys want to go to
we
Japan, and yet that's part of the culture. It's like pay your dues, kids.
What
yeah.
Like do your work.
Vic, what's like the craziest excuse that you ever heard from somebody like trying to get out of like getting out tearing down the ring?
I hurt myself in my match, or they're still in their gear and their match was like the third match. I got to change so we can get out of here. We'll change after we tear down the ring. Why didn't you? You had an hour and a half to change. Why didn't you change? Well, I had to sell gimmicks. You can do that in street clothes. You think nobody's going to recognize you in street clothes? It's just stupid stuff like that, or then you'll see somebody that carries one board and then goes and stands in the corner. So,
Yeah.
like John was saying in Japan, when we were there, we were the outsiders. We were brought in, but no, we helped set up and tear down. We did the tap out show, and they used the ring in Okinawa, and we helped set up. And when Taka's crew got there, all the young boys from Taka's crew had to come and help with the ring, and they had to help tear it down. We even went back to the building where they had where Ryuko Dragon Pro has their school, and normally the top floor is a parking lot and you can walk right in, but they were having this car sale going on the top floor, so we had to carry the ring up 3 flights of stairs back to the school and the studio and put it back together that way, because 90% of the ring didn't even fit in the elevator, so you had to just carry it all up the stairs, and it was horrible. They're like, normally it's a lot easier than this. And then we had the show there, help tear it down, take it back down the stairs, put it in the truck for the show in the other city in Okinawa. And then same thing, we had to go back and move it all around again, and then we could finally go to dinner. And just everybody pitched in. That's just the way it is.
Shows that you care a little bit, you know what I mean? Like if you're putting in work, or just asking the promoter or something, hey, do you need a ref tonight, or do you need an announcer, or whatever you do need. Like sometimes I'll just go on drives with people like to Wisconsin and stuff. I ain't even expecting to be booked, bring my stuff with me. And every now and then somebody needs an announcer or a referee, or hey, can you get your ass whooped for 3 minutes? All right, cool.
You never know. That's why they say, if you go to a show, bring your gear. You never know. Somebody could have gotten in a car accident, on the way to the show, or got pulled over. They're not going to make it in time, and someone's got to fill in. You never know what's going to happen. Somebody could call last minute. I just started throwing up. I got the flu. I can't make it. So anything can happen. And that's the best thing to do, is if you're going to go to a show, take gear with you, and hey, if they need somebody, they need somebody.
What was your experience in Okinawa like? That seems like a really cool little promotion they got there, and it's a beautiful island too.
Oh, gorgeous. The fans are incredible. In Japan, you're like a rock star. That's just how they treat you. It's like you're a rock star. You're this big time, Oscar winning movie star when you're out there. They love you. They think of you that way. It's not like here. It's a lot more, like I said, like the athlete. They look at you like the athlete and what you're doing. But Okinawa is beautiful. The company, actually, I believe they just struck a deal where they're partnering up with Dragon Gate.
Nice.
So that's starting to get going with them. But Ryuko Dragon it's a smaller company. They had maybe 8 to 10 people. That was their roster, and that was it. But real great crowd, just amazing crowd. Even for the little studio shows, when they get like 35, 40 people, they're into every moment of it. When we went, it's a smaller company. We didn't expect a whole lot. And by the time we were done, the last show we did, we were selling t-shirts and they're just coming up and handing us gifts. Case of beer, case of pop, protein powder, protein bars. You know, one guy drew a picture, one for Justin Dredd, Ben McCoy, and myself, and it's the three of us, but he rotated where we were in the picture in each one, sitting over by my TV. So it's just, they have this respect for it and this love for it, and it's just like they want to give back to you, which is incredible. We had the one night, and I'll admit, after parties with fans, especially on the indies, sometimes can be painful, to say the least. We did one at a bar out there where it was just the heel group, Mad Dog Club, and fans paid to come. And we hooked up the laptop and we were going on YouTube and showing our matches here from the States on a big screen for everybody. And, you know, we each were sitting at it. One of us was at a table with 5 or 6 different fans. And the one girl is explaining to me, well, this is this is this. Do you need another drink? And she would order it for me in Japanese. And just the one guy that even told me, like, you know, was he okay? He's a little slow. I'm like, I couldn't tell. He's completely normal. I don't know what you're talking about. They were just so friendly and so welcoming, and they just wanted to have a good time and hang out and talk with you. And it wasn't. It was really different from the conversations you have here. For some reason, I don't, the feel of it and everything. And all of a sudden, one of our, like, my match would come up on YouTube, and they put it on the screen, and they're like, "That's you." Yeah, and they would just sit there and watch it, and they're just in awe. And it was great. It's just completely different.
Do you think the mindset of the fans are a little different in Okinawa compared to like Tokyo? Because you know Okinawa is kind of rural compared to, like, you know, major cities of Japan.
It is, but it's not. I mean, we went to Tokyo and we did a Gambear show, which is a feeder for DDT. And you know, we hung out, we watched the Tokyo Joshi girls wrestle first, and then Gambear. It was all in the same building. Girls went first, then we went, and then DDT did a show afterwards. And people would leave and go right back in, leave and go right back in. And in between, you'd go outside and you'd sell all your merch. And they were all the same. You know, they loved it. Even though it was a smaller promotion, they still loved it. They came over, they talked to you. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it because somebody that rented from my sister's townhouse when they were working here in the States found out I was going to be there. And so him and his son actually came. They drove an hour to where the show was, and they came. And so I took pictures with them and we'll hold them and everything. And it was, so for me, it was really, really cool. Just because I knew them, and last time I had seen their son, he was, you know, still in diapers, and now he was like 10 years old or something. And it was just great experience to see them there and their atmosphere compared to them being here all the time. And they didn't know anybody, so they would come to like our family things all the time. And it was just to see the different aspect and see it from their side now, and everything was just incredible.
It's awesome, man. It really is. No.
Yeah.
In your opinion, going back to mentality of wrestling, in your opinion, what is a perfect formula for a wrestling match? In your opinion, if you was doing agent work and you had to put a match together of 2 good talents, they're young guys, but you knew what they were capable of doing. In your opinion, what would be the perfect formula to have a good match?
I still think the old school psychology is still one of the best. You know, babyface out wrestles and frustrates the heel to open. He gets his little shine. Heel cheats, take over. Couple little falsies, big comeback, and then before you go home, just maybe just ping pong it a second. Babyface looks like he's gonna win. Heel almost pulls it out. Heel pulls it out. Babyface pulls it out, wins, or vice versa. Heel turns it around and cheats and wins. You know, I still think that is a great psychology to a match. I really enjoy depending on who I'm wrestling, just doing more of a ping pong match where it's really just more of a back and forth. It's not cut and dry of all this heat's going to happen here and there are a couple of false heats. I'm going to hit you with 2. You're going to hit me with 2. I'm going to hit you with 2. And we go back and forth like that more to make it seem more evenly matched, depending on where we are in the feud and what's going on. So it all depends really where the story is for the matches. Like the feud I've had with Brubaker at Chicago style, we won't do a typical psychology match. It turns into more of a ping pong because the next time we wrestle, technically for Chicago style, will be like the 5th time we've wrestled there, but it's probably like the 10th time we've wrestled overall. So it should be more of an evenly matched thing. It shouldn't just be the normal. And it all depends. Like I wrestled Cal Hero up at GLCW not long ago. That was my first match back. And Dave Hero flat out said, he goes, 60-40 you. And by the end, but Cal came out, the building was a mile from his high school. And he's the chosen one. He's Dave's kid. Yeah. And he's a mile from his high school. They loved him. They absolutely loved him. So all I had to do was punch him and glare at the fans. Turn back, give him a kick, stare at the fans. So the heat was nothing. And it turned out being probably more 70-30 him. And I just started bumping for him because that's what they wanted to see. I was being a dick to them just as much as I was being a dick to him. And I was just, no, I'm going to hit him. At one point, he chopped me, and I told him to. I cut him off, went back, went for the cover, and I picked him up. I'm like, no, this rookie chopped me. No, rookies don't chop vets. I'm not going to, this isn't over yet. And I started punching him. Just easy stuff to make people not like you. So once he started bumping me around, the place just blew up, and they loved it. And it's reading the crowd and figuring it out and what you think they're going to react to. Once he came out and they went crazy, I was just like, I don't have to do anything.
I think his gimmick is so smart too, because he's doing like the 1980s.
Yeah.
So he's not like bumping crazy stuff. He's doing it very simple, old school basics matches, and it's smart.
Yeah, Hogan stuff, Dusty Rhodes stuff, Honky Tonk Man. That's the kind of stuff he does, and it's easy. It's easy on his body, everything, and he doesn't take himself seriously. I don't think it's a person or a character. He just goes out and has fun. And I think that's why he actually has a really bright future. Is some people just, they can't shut it off in and out of the ring. And he just seems like he's just a goofy kid. He's like, I'm a goofy kid, just got out of high school, so let's just go have fun. And it's great. He loves it and they love it. So go with it.
What do you feel is missing, like in this current state of like wrestling, like coming up, like people that are coming up probably like 2, maybe 3 years in? You got a lot of nice athletes, a lot of gymnasts and whatnot, and like some of the things. And I've only been wrestling matches for 2 years, but like I see a lot of people wrestling, and like, yeah, it looks amazing, but at the same time I'm like, just shake my head at some of the stuff sometimes,
selling has become a lost art. And it seems like nobody sells. Everybody wants to do lucha stuff and flippy flop around, and half the time you do it, you get hit, and then you're standing there like this, waiting for the guy to jump on you and do something. Like you don't sell into the move. You just boom, okay, and then you can count to 3, and the guy's like this, waiting for the guy. That's not wrestling to me. The other big thing is heels. There's no good heels. Everybody wants to do something flashy. Like I told him, I'm in CSW, I'm a heel, and my finisher was the sliced bread. And I'm like, I'm not doing it.
I feel like current state, like a lot of people just want to be liked as heels. Like I have that like feeling that like everybody wants to be liked, even though they get cheered. They don't tell people to shut up
It's the NWO effect. Everybody wants to be the cool bad guy. you know.
Yeah, and you have to go back and look at someone like Austin. Austin was such a good heel, they eventually liked him, and they had to make that switch with him and Hart. You know, it's that. It was organic with Brubaker. Brubaker for 2 years in CSW was a heel, and he cheated every match. He cheated in 2 matches against me. We did the cage match, and the idea of the cage match was to flip us, and we were able to pull it off. Because finally, I was originally supposed to be a fireball, but the lighter didn't work. So I just spit into his face and pinned him. And then when they were attending to him, I shoved the promoter. I'm like, "Where's my belt?" And I started talking trash and then cut a promo. And everybody hated me, and I was a cheater, even though they were, wrestling logic. It's a cheater in a match with no rules. Makes sense. But if it's organic like that, like I was a heel for 90% of the first 5 years I wrestled. I didn't have I had a milestone after I came back, and in 2011, I think, when somebody turned me babyface, and that was actually the 10th match I'd ever done as a babyface, and I was just always a heel, but eventually people started to like me, so it would have to turn. But back then it was different too, because not that the moves were flashy, but I was doing Blue Thunder, I was doing the Exploder, I was doing stuff like that, and nobody had seen it. Unless you were a tape trader, you hadn't seen that stuff because it was only happening in Japan. So it was like, whoa, that was kind of cool, type of thing. And to me, it wasn't flashy or anything, but to them, it kind of was. And eventually, just because of being better at being a heel, you became a babyface.
Sure.
So
I think too, one of the things I believe why every young guy and girl when they break into business should work as a heel, you get to learn how to call matches, you learn how to take control of stuff, but most importantly, you get humbled because in the end, your job is to look up at the lights and make sure the baby face gets over.
yeah.
I think that's always been the right psychology to do for rookies. And give them that chance to get all that experience doing that.
The other thing is, they 2 things. One is it's way easier to make somebody not like you than to like you. To try and force somebody to like you and it doesn't work, it is disastrous. The other thing is find out who has thick skin. Because when you have, a 9-year-old telling you you're an effing piece of shit with his dad standing right behind him, and you're like, really? It's like you have to have that thick skin to just chalk it off. And normally for me, I just yell at the dad instead of the kid. And then the kid gets more mad because I'm yelling at his dad. But it's you have to. I've always been, all through high school, I was the quiet kid. I was always an introvert. So when I started doing this, all my family was like, "You're not really going to do this. How are you going to get out there in a Speedo and run around in front of, hundreds of people?" And it helped me, especially when I was a heel, just to get over all of it and just go ahead and be a dick. It's like deep down, there's, I'm a short Italian. I've got a temper. I'm short. Everybody picks on me for it, always has. So it's like I finally just got to say, fuck you to everybody and get away with it. It was just like, wow, that was great.
It's the best drug, man. That's why I used to tell my employer. That's why I used to tell my employer back home in Kentucky when I was wrestling. They're like, "Does it help you out with anything?" I'm like, "I don't need a therapist, man. I wrestle." I was like, I get pissed off at work. I go out there on a weekend, piss off a bunch of people, get to say shit to them. And man, it feels good. Go back. I'm like, yeah, it felt great.
During the week I have the gym, and on the weekend, if I get mad at myself about something, light me up with chops.
Yeah.
Just beat me up. Give me a couple shots. Let's go. All right. And plus I can just be a dick to people and get away with it. And it just blows off all this steam.
All right. So how do you what is your regimen when it comes to the gym? Looking like $1 million, man. Like I'm trying myself. I've lost like 30 pounds trying to get the abs. They're coming in. But how do you how do you get it and stay that way? You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to look more like a wrestler. When I first started, I looked like the black Kevin Owens, like when I first started. So
Everybody's different, but 90% of what you do is how you eat and how you rest, to be honest with you. And for me, over time, I always had sports. So I started working out when I was a sophomore in high school, but I tell people I didn't really know what I was doing until I went to college. And that's when I learned how to work out. And I still graduated college at about 145 pounds. Your body doesn't change until you get older. I saw a major change at about 27, after I'd been working out for years. And that's when the first major change came. And I was like, wow, okay, now I'm starting to develop more muscle. And it really, by then it was how you work out, what you do, and what you eat. And you see a lot of kids at the gym, and their form is horrendous. They don't know what they're doing. They've never even looked at a video of somebody working out or anything. And if their form is wrong, or they're just throwing the stuff around and doing stuff, it's like, do you know what you're doing? Do you feel what you're doing? The guy has to go over and he's right in front of the mirror. He has to wiggle between machines so he can do something in front of the mirror. I'm like, doing it in front of the mirror and seeing yourself do it doesn't tell you what you're doing. Closing your eyes or turning away from the mirror and doing it, that tells you what you're doing, because that's how you feel it. And the other thing is, it's not and for a rep, is bring it up and squeeze it and hold it. The slower and the more controlled, actually, and less cheating is better for you. The big thing now with a lot of people working out is the time under tension. So a lot of people, especially if they're trying to lose weight, do a lighter weight and do slow motion reps, 10 up and 10 down, on everything. Guy used to wrestle, Doug Simmons, as a trainer, and he swears by it. And he's ripped, he's shredded. He puts all of his people through that kind of stuff, and it'll kick your ass way more than you think, than throwing 400 pounds on the bar and doing it one rep. Doing 50 pounds and doing 10 reps and 10 seconds up and 10 seconds down on everything is going to kick your ass way more. And for me, I incorporate both. I try and do heavy stuff. I do drop sets. And then maybe on the final part of the drop set, it's all the slow motion stuff, things like that. I do a body part a day. That's how I split it up. Arms one day, shoulders one day, chest, back, legs. And it's just always, it's worked better for me. I get more time to rest. And then I only really do about 20 minutes of cardio on the elliptical after my workouts. And I don't do it on my leg day. So it's just, especially, I work in an office, so I make my food, 8 to 10 ounces of chicken with some brown rice, pack 2 meals like that for work, and I take that with me. I eat first thing in the morning, and it's your diet and how you rest too. But it's staying with it, and don't get on the scale. Don't get on the scale, especially don't get on the scale every day.
Okay.
Your weight will fluctuate too much, and it throws you completely off. And you're better off getting on the scale once a week, or just going off of how your clothes fit and things like that, than and taking a before picture, and then 3 weeks later take a picture and compare the two and look at it that way. Because the other thing you gotta think about is 2 things. In order to burn, your body burns more calories if it has more muscle on it than having more fat. So you want to build the muscle, but at the same time, muscle is denser than fat, so it's going to weigh more. So you may throw yourself off going on the scale. You start building the muscle underneath the fat, and you may look bigger at first, but then eventually the fat starts burning and coming down, keeping your carbs low too. I'm not a big guy on the keto diet and stuff like that, and just all meat and fat. Diabetes runs in my family. I've been pre-diabetic for years. And so I always have to have some sort of carbs.
Yeah.
You know, so I stick with brown rice or oatmeal, you know, stuff like that. But you got to find what works best for you.
Yeah.
And go with that. And if you're losing weight and you feel comfortable with where you're going, that's great. Go look at, and it may be discouraging, but go look at people like, you know, Dexter Jackson, Ronnie Coleman, and stuff like that, not to see how they're working out, but their form of how they're doing things. You see, especially people doing side raises, and they're doing one of these, and it's like this, and the weight's up here, their elbows here. Well, the delt connects from here to here, so this is what has to go up. If you don't know that this has to go up, you're not going to do it right. You know, it's even take a kinesiology course, learn the origin and insertion of muscles. I did it in college, so it's one of the things that to me it's like, oh yeah, you have to do it that way. You know, but it's for me, it's just not giving up on it and just sticking with it. You know, I'll be 48 in 4 months, and I won't lie, and I'm very open about it. When I played football in college, I dabbled in steroids, and about 5-6 years ago, I separated my shoulder, and I was just depressed as hell. Couldn't work out, nothing, couldn't wrestle. So I went to the doctor, and they decided to check my testosterone level. For my age at the time, it was supposed to be 300 at the minimum, and I was at 80.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
So I do have a prescription. I get 200 milligrams a week, you know, and does it help? Yeah, it helps, but that only gets me to a normal level. You know, it doesn't put me back at an 18-year-old where my testosterone level's at 1,000. It puts me back 300-400. But it does it help? Yeah, it helps your mentality, and that's the big thing. Is if this isn't right, nothing else is gonna be. So if you have the mentality and you're positive and you don't get discouraged when you lose weight or when you gain weight, that's why I say stay off the scale. It keeps your head right. And as long as that's right, then you can keep doing what you want to do and you'll get the gains you want to get. A lot of it is mental, just as much as it is diet.
Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. If you listen to this, man,
That's
Take
a
your
knowledge
pads
drop
off.
right there, folks. That's knowledge.
Go on Facebook and friend Doug Simmons. He posts stuff on Facebook all the time of the workouts he puts his clients through. You know, and it's the slow motion stuff. And Doug used to be, yeah, he used to be bigger, but now he's way leaner than he ever was when he was wrestling. You know, and he's a great guy. If you're in the Chicagoland area, reach out to him. You know, ask him for advice. You know, if you want a trainer, you know, he still helps Ali out. You know, he was working with Kylie Ray for a long time too. You know, a lot of those guys that who ended up going to like the freelance academy and were wrestling and training, he was helping. You know, he's a great guy.
Now, speaking of former injuries and everything that you had over the years, of course, everybody knows you broke your neck years ago.
Mhm.
And how long were you actually out of wrestling altogether when that happened?
Well, when it happened or when I realized it happened.
I know you said you was wrestling still when you actually had the broken neck. So when you realized, okay, this is not working,
So what happened was did a three-way German suplex with Christopher Daniels and Nathan Green, where I was the first person that went flying and I landed straight down like this. And I never got an x-ray, never got it checked. But I was told years later, I'm like, you fractured something in here at some point. And my neck never felt the same after that. And just the calcium buildup on the vertebrae, it got to the point where I couldn't tuck my chin anymore.
Oh, wow.
So a few years later, since I couldn't tuck my chin on a bump, I'd hit my head. And I'd ring my own bell over and over again. And this is before any concussion protocols or anything like that. And I was, like I said, I thought I was invincible. So I would hit my head one week, and then the next week probably had a minor concussion and went and did it again. And I did it over and over. And it was finally, it's unfortunate the person who it happened with was Ace Steele, who's a very good friend of mine. We were going at it, and he's one of those guys that you have that intensity with, and your friends, things get a little snug. And I blasted him a couple forearms, and he came back with a couple, and one didn't catch the right spot, kind of caught my jaw. And I just remember thinking in my head, that was snug. And the next thing was I was sitting in a chair in the locker room, and I looked at the guy next to me and said, "Who put on my pants?" And they said, "You made it through the whole match. You fed in for everything. You did everything fine." I didn't remember any of it. That was actually the second time that ever happened to me in wrestling. So that's when it hit me that I was having trouble. And because I remember I got my bell rung the week before, and I wasn't actually supposed to wrestle in that match, but Ken Anderson was, and he had the flu, and he called off, and they asked me if I could, and so I took it. And that's when it just kind of went to another show, which was Dreamwave promoter Jay Repsol was running Revolution Championship in LaSalle at the time. I got there early, the ring was set up, started warming up and doing stuff by myself in the ring, bumping around. And I remember hitting the canvas at one point and looking at the ceiling, and I felt like I was on a waterbed, and the ceiling tile started spinning. And I just went, I'm done. And I'm like, I'm gonna hurt somebody if I do this. And so that's when I finally decided to hang it up, and I was never coming back. I had a number of people asking me at times, "Come in, just do a battle royal or something." Like, no, I'm done. I wanted nothing to do with wrestling after that. And this was before my neck really got bad. Um, so I was just sitting around. I wouldn't watch wrestling on TV, and this is when Punk was really blowing up too. And we've been friends for years. And I would just read on the sheets what he did, and what Ace was doing in Ring of Honor and stuff like that. But I wouldn't watch anything. And it was neck started really getting bad, and the doctor told me, he's like, "You're too young, you're too athletic. I'm not going to put you through surgery." So we did pain management and epidurals for 4 or 5 years, until I was at a Slayer concert and standing in the lawn down at now it's the U.S. Bank Theater.
Oh, Tinley Park.
Yeah. And some drunk guy came running down the hill and slammed right into my back, and my head snapped. And I went to the gym that Monday, and I just grabbed the 30-pound dumbbells to warm up doing curls, and my left arm went like this, and my right arm didn't move. What the hell's going on? And I couldn't bend my right arm with the weight in it. And then I felt it starting to slip out of my hand. So that's when I went to the doctor and said, "You gotta cut me open. I can't live like this." And he gave me the whole, "Well, it's different for everybody." I'm like, "Yeah, but I need to work out. I have to do this. And if I can't even hold a 30-pound dumbbell, you need to fix it." And so finally he fixed it, and we did the surgery, and I woke up the next day and it was like, "How's the pain?" "This isn't pain." I think I used maybe 10 of the Norco that they gave me and the Flexerol just to sleep, and that was it.
Yeah.
There was no pain anymore compared to what I was in. But the doctor did tell me, he's like, "Yeah, whoever did the X-rays and said they thought you had a fracture at some point," he goes, "You may have had a hairline fracture of a couple of them, because there was a lot more bone in there that we had to shave down than we thought." So what had happened was I couldn't put my head back anymore, and the bones were just hitting each other because there was so much calcium buildup. And finally, when the guy hit me, that pushed the disc beyond the bones and pinched off the nerve. So he told me we cleaned out the discs, and then we had to shave down a lot of the excess bone that was there just to make it right. He goes, "There was a lot more than we thought we were going to do." And okay, great. So it wasn't until, that was really the confirmation, which was like 6 years later, 5, 6 years later, that I got that, yeah, you broke your neck at some point. Something was at least a hairline fracture. But otherwise, I never hit a football. And then coming back, honestly, it was one of those things. My daughter was really young, and I threw in Pro Wrestling Noah, and she fell in love watching the third anniversary Kenta and Kanamura. She would always want to watch it. I wanted to watch that match 50 times. And then one day Punk was over, and he asked if he could watch a DVD, and Tim and Daniel Bryan from Ring of Honor. And my daughter looks at TV and looks at him and looks at me. Like, Punk? Like, yeah, that's Punk. And she pointed at the TV, Punk? Yeah, that's Punk on TV too. And she was just like, wow. And that's when I caved and let her watch a match with me and Punk. And that's when she sat there and she went, Daddy? It was like, yeah, that's me. Oh, and then we had, now that match I watched probably like 150,000 to 200 times at least, because we had to watch that. And coming back, it was just, I wanted to wrestle for her live one time. And I showed up at the building, empty building, just the chairs and everything. And I just walked in and it was just like, okay, maybe once more.
hey, it's an addiction, bro.
It is, man.
I didn't even wrestle the match in it. I didn't even know how it was going to go or anything. I bumped around in the ring practice the one day, and that was it. So I had no clue how this was going to go. And it was just like, yeah, once a month. Okay, maybe twice a month if they need it. And then I started taking bookings all the time. And that was 2009, 2010. And here we are. And things have changed. The way I do things has changed tremendously. But and how I do them is way different. But yeah, it's just the neck was an eye opener. Some other injuries were eye openers too, but that was the one that it landed at home where it was just like, you're not invincible, like you thought you were. So,
if you had to go back in time and talk to yourself when you first started in 1998 as Vic Capri, Good Mike from 2021, what would be the advice you would give to yourself? Would you sit down with him and go, look, I know I'm from the future, probably wondering what the fuck's going on, but let me tell you what's going to happen in the next 20 years,
Yeah, it would definitely be, you're not invincible. Just because ECW is doing it, don't do the unprotected chair shots. Yeah, great, it's cool, but unless somebody really knows how to swing it and protect you on it, it's not a good idea. No. That's the biggest thing is you're not invincible, and stay away from the unprotected chair shots. I love working with deathmatch guys for hardcore matches because they know how to, all the weapons, they know how to pull them just like a punch, and most people don't. And finding that it is a big thing, and it's so much nicer working a deathmatch guy if you're gonna do a hardcore match, and they'll protect you. But 90% of the people don't, and that chair is coming, and just doing this puts a lot of strain on your neck and your skull and your brain, and it'll mess you up.
One of the first times I ever saw you wrestle, way back in the IWA Mid-South days, you was managed by the one Sherry Martel. What was that like, man? Because Bobby Blade's a good friend of mine back in Kentucky, and Bobby used to work for Sherry when Sherry had that promotion in Kentucky, and everyone always said like she was like the most genuine, real deal, nicest lady anyone could ever work with. But like that had to be kind of cool, man. Like you growing up being like a kid watching AWA, and her, she was a big star in AWA at one time, and went on with WWF. That had to be like a really cool experience.
Yeah, she was AWA Women's Champion for a long time, but well before she managed people in WWF. And it was one of those things that Ian Rotten just said, hey, we're gonna have Sherry manage you. You're the heel. You're gonna do this, that. And I was like, wow, really? Okay, sure. And we went out there, and she was talking shit and to the crowd, and she would whisper to me what to do constantly. The whole time we were in there waiting for the baby face to come out or something, she would be whispering to me, "Hey, do this, do this, do this. This guy over here said this. Go say something to him." She's she was very professional, and she could read the crowd for you and let you know what to do and point you in the right direction. It was a great learning experience getting to be out there with her. And I've had some managers that they call you over and they just go blah 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 in your ear just to make it seem like they were saying something. Sherry would call you over and actually tell you something that could help you in the match and how to get heat over a certain section of the crowd, or what to do, even though you didn't call it in the back. Hey, if you do this, I think you'll get more heat. Go try it. She would give you that advice. She was still teaching you, even though you were out there in character playing your parts. So it was super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Ewokk, you have any other additional questions, man?
Nah, man, I think they've all been answered. Oh, do you have do you have anything upcoming, like any upcoming dates, some appearances and whatnot?
Yeah, I got what's coming up? I got ICW in Milwaukee coming up not this week, next week maybe. I think it's next week. I have to look at the calendar, and I'm on my phone with you guys right now, so it'll mute me. But I got ice. Oh wait, I think I wrote it down. Thought I wrote it down somewhere. I got ICW on the 27th, then Frontline Pro on the 3rd. Rob Van Dam will be there for that. Go back to GLCW next month. CSW. It's a Friday, the middle of next month. I know that. I almost want to say the 16th, but I'm not 100% sure. It's like the second Friday of the month, or third Friday of the month. So I got all that coming up. I've got a pretty full schedule between WPW and Frontline Pro in Wisconsin, and ICW and GLCW in Wisconsin. They keep me pretty busy, and then POW as well coming up more in June, and July I think is off. But yeah, I've got a pretty full schedule. Even especially now that stuff in Illinois is starting to open up too, it'll get busier.
Yeah, and that's another question. Like, where do you see Chicago wrestling once everything is open up fully?
I think it's going to start booming again. I mean, you already saw like right away. Warrior Pro Wrestling is what they call it, I think, or Warrior Wrestling over at the high school. They're already putting together a show for June. Freelance. I don't think they.
It's a film. It's a film show. I think they're filming it in their facility.
Like a little studio show.
Yeah. Okay, I figured they were coming over the show. CSW is starting to run more. So I think once everything starts to open up, especially as we get into the summer months and people can do outdoor shows, I think you'll really start to see it blow up again, and people will be busy. And that was the thing with the CSW show. They wanted to do a promo to start the show, and I told them I thought it was a bad idea. People have waited 4 months to see wrestling in Illinois. Go out there and start the show and give them a match. Nobody wants to get bored by a promo when they've been sitting at home and haven't been out and haven't been able to go see wrestling. Just let them watch wrestling. We'll tell the story in the match. We don't need the promo before the show. And that's what we ended up doing. And I hope it went over as well as I thought it was going to. But it was my opinion that I didn't think it needed it. So, Chicago, there's a reason why AEW, their very first show when Cody put everything out, there's a reason they came to Chicago. Chicago is a big wrestling hotspot. There's a reason they came. There's a reason WrestleMania has been here a number of times. People forget about it because you got New York and you got Miami and LA and stuff like that. But there's huge wrestling fans in Chicago. You get that that hotbed from all the way from Minneapolis and Green Bay, the old school. A lot of the NWA guys came out of Minnesota. You got the Bruiser and the Crusher that came out of Wisconsin. These are old school fans that they just love wrestling. They want to see it, and I think
super passionate.
Yeah, they want to be entertained by it, and it'll blow up again.
It's almost like wrestling is like ingrained in the Midwest culture in a way compared to other cities. It's just a Midwest thing. It's like the South. It's like being in the South, either NASCAR, Jesus, or wrestling. That's really the three things you want.
Like
football.
My dad and my mom always used to talk about Dick the Bruiser at the Chicago theater or whatever, and I was like, damn, like I didn't even think y'all liked wrestling, but like their parents and grandparents used to take them every Friday night to see Dick the Bruiser wrestle.
The old Chicago amphitheater, but Windy City used to run there all the time. AWA used to run there all the time too. That was a big place for wrestling. Long before the Rosemont Horizon, now Allstate Arena, long before the Chicago Stadium and United Center. That was the place to go, and everybody came. Everybody's seen wrestling there. If you're my age, you've probably seen wrestling. People think because NWA was out of Charlotte and then Atlanta when Turner bought it. And WWF was always out of Connecticut and New York, but people don't remember like AWA. Shouldn't say AAW. Screw them. Another story. AWA, they were majority out of Minnesota. And a lot of those guys started there before they went to NWA or WWF. And people forget about that. And so the Midwest has always been big on wrestling.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it's crazy to think like when the next 5 years coming up of wrestling, how many stars we're going to see coming out of Chicago. It just feels like it's just, you look at like some of the people right now going into like AEW, you see like a lot of the new signees are Midwest kids.
Yeah.
And picked up.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It like I said, it really blew up after the State Athletic Commission stopped regulating it. Then everybody was training people. Everybody was running shows. But you did find that, there's a lot of guys that went above and beyond and didn't train here. They went and found somewhere else to train. They went to Truth Martini, or they went to the Ring of Honor School, stuff like that, or they went to the Monster Factory, places like that. They bit the bullet, and that's how they paid their dues. Is they bit the bullet and they moved somewhere to go learn, and then came back home. And that's something you got to do, because at one point there were so many people training, and half of them were garbage. You weren't going to learn anything from them. It was going to be, they're going to take your money and, okay, you trained for a month, go out on the road, and you don't know shit. And then you go out and you mess up, and it's a black mark on the Chicago scene. So, and it happened a lot.
Absolutely. One final question for you. When the day comes that you ever do plan to retire, which I don't think you never will, I think you'll probably be wrestling your like 80 years old backdropping 20-year-olds. But dude's fucking Iron Man. I mean, you got to say that, man. He's pro wrestling's Wolverine. But the day that ever does come, what would you want your legacy to be known for?
Just being professional, for the most part. Just being. Ian Rotten told me at one time that he didn't know who I was, and then after meeting me and seeing me wrestle, somebody asked him about me, and he said he's a class act in and out of the ring, absolutely 100%. He goes, book him, and that's it. Just that people, that have earned people's respect. I think over the years I have, and I've been told I have. I've had, being older, I've had a number of people that when I came back, hey, you see this picture? Oh yeah, that's me. You know who the kid is? No, it's me. Fuck you. Like, God damn it, I know I'm old. Leave me alone, man. But it's it's people that have said, they came in, they saw me wrestle and they were a fan, and
Yeah.
made them want to wrestle, and things like that. And that's something huge to me. If I can make somebody love this and become passionate about it, then that's great. And as I get older now, it's more of I'm not going to get signed anywhere. I've given up on that. I gave up on that a long time ago. But if I can have a good match with one of the young kids that they can put it on the highlight reel and they get noticed with it, then fantastic. Then I did what I wanted to do. I just want to help everybody learn at this point. I want to give back to the kids, especially the ones that are learning, and they think they have to do 9 million spots. And it's like, I went out there. I tell everybody this is everybody says less is more. Prime example, Ishii over in New Japan. Moveset is clothesline, forearm, chop, headbutt, enziguri, shoulder tackle, suplex. That's it.
Man, it sounds like my moveset.
It is the most basic moveset you'll ever find. But if you go back and you watch, especially any of the last 5 G1 tournaments from New Japan, he has had the best match on almost every card that he's on.
Yeah, him versus Shibata, him versus holy shit. Minoru Suzuki and him had a hell of a throwdown, man. I mean, that was a good match.
Him and Omega, him and Juice Robinson from a few years ago was phenomenal. I mean, I think there was one person I watched and I was like, I can't watch this. That's like if he has to wrestle like Yoshihashi or somebody who's just terrible. I don't understand why he's there. But yeah, he doesn't have a bad match, and he's not flashy. He just knows how to tell a story, and everything he does is so fluid in the transitions. It's amazing. If you watch that and get away from all the flippy stuff and just learn how to work, and he sells better than anybody. He takes a shot, and the knockout sell he does is sick. I love it. And he is by far one of my favorite over the last 5-6 years, head and heels over everybody. And it's just learn that aspect of it and get that down, and then throw your flippy stuff in if it fits. But if you can't get that down, then you're not working. And it is still a work, and you still have to give the fans something. Let them. Everybody knows it's fake, but if you can get that one person, there's a lot of kids in the crowd, they don't know it's fake. So convincing them is one thing, but you get that one adult that goes, "Oh man, he really got him with that shot." Yeah. And you get the guys in the back who go, "Dude, is he okay? He got blasted on that." And that's where now you're a worker. And I think that's what I want people to learn from me more than anything else. Just a class act, just well respected, and just a good worker. That's what I would like to be known for.
I think you definitely have earned that 10 times over, man, for everything you've done for guys. Seriously, I'll definitely say this. We're looking forward to having you on the roster with us at Chicagoland. I know me and Ewokk, we're happy to have you there as not only just as a talent, but also as locker room leader, mentor type guy for a lot of the younger guys that we got there. So we're definitely looking forward to working with you. But most importantly, thank you for coming on our show, man, and dropping not only great stories, but also a lot of knowledge that I hope any of the young guys and girls are listening to this podcast, as much as we've started to build a little fan base and following on it for wrestlers. This is a beginning of a month-long series with veterans that we respect that are good teachers, So he was actually the very first person we picked out of the whole field. I was like, we'll have you. Next episode's J-Rock, who wrestled with Ring of Honor.
Yep.
Of course, we got C-Red coming up on some shows, and Bob Evans as well. So, I mean, good guys all the way through with a lot of knowledge. But I mean, I'm definitely honored to have you on board with us.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
I appreciate that, guys. Anytime. I still got stories that we didn't get into that. If you want to talk about them, I'll talk about them.
Oh, yeah, like hey,
Anytime, man.
hey, be on the lookout for part 2. We're gonna have part 2 eventually. Hopefully, we get our studio set up. We're gonna get that part 2 in. You know.
Yeah, part
Whatever
two
you guys
with it
need,
inside the
anything,
studio with the beer and the pizza. That'd be a good night
there
out.
you go.
You know.
Anytime you need it, no problem, man.
Absolutely. Once again, everybody, this is JB with Ewokk and the Ewokk and JB show with the man himself, Vic Capri. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on all of our big networks, Genres Podcasting Network, and definitely check us out on Spotify and Anchor FM. Everybody have a great night.
And you know how I gotta hit you with the peace.
Peace.